Alright, here we go. We're going to start on now our part 2 of our geometry review and make sure that you understand everything that you need to know here. Now, so the first one we began with like some trigonometry, and we started getting into some parallelograms, some rectangles, but now we're getting into some polygons. So you might want to look back up the video on polygons, which was unit 10, I believe, but you can look around there. Okay, so look at that test video and that might help you there. But we're going to start at question number 15. Now question number 15 was asking us to determine if it's a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. And the shortcut, you could say, I mean, obviously we need to know rectangle properties, and we need to know rhombus properties and stuff like that. So you can be adding those things on here, and then square properties. But here's what we came down to. If I give you a set of points, okay, if I give you four points, okay, group the first and third together, group the second and fourth together. Now, how this works is this. If you want to prove it's a rectangle, look at their distance and use the distance formula. In other words, x1 minus x2 squared plus, or vice versa. I always do the first one first, but I know the normal folks do it the other way. Either way, it'll still be fine. And make sure those are congruent. For a rhombus, we want to look at the slopes. And so again, here we're saying y1 minus y2, or y2 minus y1, x1 minus x2, and we want to see if those are perpendicular. If they are one or the other, that's great. If they are both, then that is a square. That is the worst way to write a Q. Let's try that again. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you look at number 15, you would have this set up, and we're going to say the first one and the third one are going to go together because we're focusing on the diagonals. If you were to graph this, you're trying to connect this first one with the third one. In other words, like if you were to like do this, you'd be like first, third, you're trying to connect those, second, fourth, you're trying to connect those, and you're looking at the diagonals and what happens with the diagonals. Because we now know to do it shorter and quicker, if I look at those diagonals, and if the diagonals are congruent on length, then they are a rectangle. So here I could type in, or say negative, what I always do with distance formula, squared, you might want to make sure you add this to your formula sheet, squared minus like that, minus squared plus minus squared. For a rhombus, we're going to do slope, x and y is on top. So here I just say negative 3, x's together, 8, and then 2, negative 7. The other one would be negative 1, 6, and 4, 4, negative 7. This one should have been 5, because, well, apparently I was paying attention to that. This should be negative 5. Okay, so you type those in. If you type those in, you're going to get 13.03, so we'll say 13.0. Basically, you get the same answer either way. So we for sure know that these are congruent, and thus it is a rectangle. So it is a rectangle. Now I take these same points, and I could say 2, negative 5, negative 3, 8, 4, negative 7. Notice the y's are on top and the x's are on the bottom. You type those in, you got here 7 over 11. Oh wait, that's positive 7 over 11. Here I got 7 over negative 11 and 11 over negative 7. For it to be perpendicular, I would have had to have one of those be completely positive and one be negative. So these are not perpendicular, not that. So it can't be a rhombus. So that means this is only a rectangle. Now if it had been both, I would have said square. Keep in mind you having to choose the right one there. All right, moving on. All right, on this one, this is very interesting here. Keep in mind, on a rhombus, the diagonals are 90 degrees. So here I could say 5x minus 15 is equal to 90. When you solve that, you're going to end up with x is equal to 21. That just tells you what x is equal to. But we want PST. So we want this angle here. This angle and this one are congruent. So if I put the 21 in here and say 2 times 21 minus 3 is equal to, say, 42 minus 3 is 38, then that would give me the degrees for this one. You could probably get that hopefully from the multiple choice, and I'm hoping that this is not less difficult than it looks. But there you go. That's all you have to do for that one. Okay, number 17, in kite JKLM, the measurement of angle LMN is 25 degrees, and LKN is 43 degrees. Find MLK. So we're saying here LMN right here is 25 degrees. And then LKN right here is 43 degrees. And they want you to find MLK. Okay, so we're looking for this angle right here. Well, notice that I've made this into a triangle. How many degrees is a triangle? 180. I mean, sometimes you got to look. Not even a formula sheet's going to help. You got to look and see what they are giving you. So this one I could say, let's say here, well, we'll say this is x. X plus 25 plus 43 equals 180, because every triangle adds up to 180. These are things that we should remember from last semester. So x plus, let's say here, 68 is equal to 180. And then if you subtract, you should get 112 degrees. And there you go. Now keep in mind that these would be bisected, so if they ask for like this one right here, you would have to divide by, say, 2, so on and so forth. Alright, in a trapezoid, find the measurement of angle A. Okay, on this one, all you gotta do here is kind of keep in mind that in a trapezoid, no matter what, like consecutive would add up to 180. And then next to each other on the same side, those are going to be congruent. So however you want to remember that, I would write that in there. So if I say 180 minus 76, I got 104, and then that's 104, so is A, so this one is 104 degrees. Again, look for something simple, don't overthink it. Okay, now there is one thing that we had here that said that when we look at these, this middle segment right here is equal to something about that. So we just need this formula, something to add to your formula sheet. So if I wanted to try to say set this up and say like, let's say this was segment 1, segment 2, and here's segment 3. Okay, segment 3 is equal to 1/2 the sum of 1 plus 2. Okay, in other words, this 73 is equal to 1/2, excuse me, 1/2, I'll say this is x plus 98. Now, again, a couple of different ways. If you wanted to do the numerical solve, you could, but if you wanted to, if you're solving this by hand, you can multiply by 2 to get rid of the 73, or I mean to get rid of the 1/2. That would give me 146 is equal to x plus 98, and then I could subtract the 98 from the 146, so 146 minus 98, and that would give me 48. And that would be my answer. And that's it. That's all you're doing there. Alright, so for this question on number 22, we want to put this in simplest terms. Ratio of y to x. Okay, so what does that mean? That y should be on top, x should be on the bottom. If they say it the other way around, like say x to y, then we want the x on top and the y on the bottom. So how does that work? Well, essentially, what happens here is this. We're going to say solve for, what we want to do here is we want to get the x on the bottom. Okay, so because like notice here how we have that. So I would do that by dividing by x. Okay, so when I do that, I end up with, and let me erase so I can have some space over here, I end up with 6 is equal to 14y over x. Okay, well now I need to get rid of this 14. So I can divide by 14. So now I have y over x, because that will be left over here. Y over x is equal to 6 over 14. Simplify 6 over 14, which would have been 3/7. So that would be the ratio in simplest terms. This question is on the test. I just looked because I was like, I don't know if we had covered it. So make sure you kind of understand that. If you want me to give you more questions on that later on in the review or like say in class, I can do that. All right, so now let's look at the next one. Number 23, they tell us there's 66 grams of protein, 66 grams of protein in a 12-ounce serving. Okay, and they want to know how much is going to be in a 4-ounce serving. So notice how I've got this set up, ounces with ounces, grams to grams, and so I can cross multiply and then divide. So if I say 66 times 4, what I would get, so this would be 12x, I'll put this over here to the side, and if I say 66 times 4, helps if my calculator was ready, times 4 is equal to 264, and then I can divide by 12 to get my simplified answer. So x here is equal to 22. Those should be fairly simple. I would make sure that you're ready for those type of problems. All right, the next one here is you need to realize, because these are along the same line, these are similar triangles. So what we can do here is we can set a proportion and say like 7/14, small triangle versus large triangle, small versus large, equals 12 over, say, x. You just cross multiply and divide, and you should end up with 24. That's a simple, I mean, if you see something else there that can make that easier, go with it because it probably does work. I'm just telling you that would also work. So number 25, let's look at that. Okay, so on this one, look, we can say, since small one like this, since this is divided by this and they're parallel, that makes these two lines parallel. We can say like 12.5 over 7.5 is equal to 3y minus 2, notice top part with top part, y plus 2. So when you multiply that out, you end up with 12.5 y plus 25 is equal to 7.5 times 3, which is 22.5, 22.5y minus 15. Okay, and you know how I like to do things, variables to the left, numbers to the right. I would have ended up here with, say, negative 10y is equal to negative 40, divide, and you have y equals 4. So if you want to find BC, again, notice here I would have to put the 4 here and the 4 here, and that's going to give me 10 plus 6, so the total here would be 16 because I want all of BC. Don't assume that these two are the same length, so you just can't add those up. Do not think that you're supposed to be going just for, say, quickie answers. This is not going to be set up for quickie answers. So in this one, and again, notice these are all proportionality, because these two are equal, these two angles that bisects, that makes this and this together as a proportion 6 over 3x is equal to the corresponding side 2x over 25. So notice here how like this one went with this one goes with this one, they line up like that. Excuse me. So then from there I should be able to multiply, cross multiply, and get, say, 5x squared is equal to 150. Sorry, 6x squared. How did I think that 2 times 3 is 5? Wow, I'm getting more tired than I thought. Okay, divide by 6, and you've got x squared is equal to, obviously, 25. And then if you take the square root, you would find out that x is 5. Okay, so I want PR. Put a 5 here, 2 times 5 is 10. So notice here, they're not just asking us to find x, a lot of times they're asking us to also find the other side. Anyways, that just seems special. All right, number 27, I'm not going to copy that down. It's pretty simple. It's a word problem. I know, it's a word problem, oh gosh. One student who is 5 feet 4 inches tall measured a shadows to find the height of a telephone pole. The student's shadow was 5 feet long. At the same time, the shadow of the telephone pole was 18 feet 9 inches long. How tall is the telephone pole? Okay, so the 5 feet 4 inches, I would convert to, say, a fraction or a decimal. If you put that into, and like if you kept it in feet, I mean, in all honesty, the easiest thing to do would be to actually convert this all to inches. That way you have the same thing. That's what actually I'm going to do. So this would become 64 inches because there's 12 inches in a foot. Okay? 5 feet would be 60 inches, and that is the length of the shadow. So I'm going to put those together. The 18 feet 9 inches would be, say, 18 times the 12 plus the 9 inches, and you get 225 inches. Now, that is a shadow also. So let's see here. Shadow, shadow, because this one was a shadow. That means I would set this up as 225 over, say, x, cross multiply and divide. So I could say 225 times the 64 divided by the 60, and you get 240 inches. So 240 inches, and then if you want to change that into, say, feet or whatever, or if you have answer choices, you could do that. Basically, if you divide by 12 and it works out nicely, this ends up being 20 feet. Okay, and then let's look at another one and make sure we have that all set up. Yes, we'll do one more, number 28, and that'll be my last one. Okay, so it says we have a scale of 1 inch to 4 feet, and we have a measurement on a room that's 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches to blank feet. Say cross again, multiply, and what you should get when you say 4 times 3.5 is like 14 feet. So you'd have 1x equals 14, divide by 1, of course, and that tells you x is equal to 14, and this is going to be feet, so 14 feet. Maybe that's something important, I don't know. But I will stop there for part 2 and continue on with part 3 next. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for giving me your attention. Y'all take care.